good to have you with us on this edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, tonight we start off with a conversation on the great civic collapse in India's biggest urban cities. We may talk about smart cities, we may talk about development, but the fact and the reality on ground is that month after month and year after year, every time there is a bit of a rainfall, every time any city witnesses even heavy rainfall, the city comes to a standstill and there is a massive collapse of the entire system. You can talk about Gurugram, you can talk about Delhi, you can talk about Ahmedabad, Bhopal, Pune, Mumbai, an habitual one, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, and the most recent one, Chennai. What is going on? Are we simply going to silently accept this fact that the climate is changing? We will have unprecedented rainfall, we will have unseasonal rainfall, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that our civic authorities are going to do about it. Year after year, is waterlogging and flooding going to be part of our lives? Damage to property, thousands of crores lost simply because we can't plan our cities better, simply because we can't catch up with development and additional population coming into these cities, simply because we can't stop encroachment and we want to build wherever we find land. Sorry about that. Simply because we don't want to plan. We don't care about it. Each city, if you look at it, the civic corporation, the municipal bodies seem to be failing their people year after year. There doesn't seem to be any accountability. Every year the same issues about drainage systems, cleanup, preparation before monsoon takes place and nothing happens. Before I go across to our panelists to open up this conversation, I want to bring to you one report of what Chennai just witnessed.
We're standing at an important arterial road of Chennai called as Poonamallee High Road, and adjacent to this road you could see the actual condition as to what has occurred to Chennai on the first day of monsoon season. One night of rainfall, decent rainfall, not heavy rainfall, and this is the amount of water stagnation that you could see over here. The shocking part here is that this is actually right next to the Chennai Police Commissioner's office, and this much water is stagnated at this point. In fact, this location has become quite notorious because for every rainfall, even the one last week, there was this much amount of water over here, and this is what is actually raising questions about what kind of preparedness has been done so far to make sure this does not occur, because at the other end you could see the amount of traffic because of this waterfall and such. Currently, this location, for almost 400 to 500 meters is submerged under this much water, causing so much trouble to the commuters. And this is what you can see at Chennai currently, just one day of rainfall.
Just one day of rainfall, and look what happened to Chennai. Every year in the month of October, and every time you question the authorities, they say, well, what to do? Heavy rainfall occurred. We are doing our work. So tonight, viewers, I don't want to get into a political fight and a political blame game. I want to bring out the real concerns, bring out the real issues and the failures, whether it's the BBMP in Bengaluru, the BMC in Mumbai, the Greater Chennai Corporation in Chennai, or your MCDs in Delhi, or your civic body in Gurugram, Bhopal, Hyderabad. Ask anybody and the reasons are pretty much common. How do we fix it? That's the big question. Let's say good evening to Srinivas Murthy, architect and urban designer, Dr. Ravindra, former BBMP commissioner and former chief secretary for government of Karnataka, Leo Saldana, policy analyst and campaigner, and Jayaram Venkateshan, convener for Arapur Iyakam and a social activist. Mr. Venkateshan, let's start with you. Why is it that every year Chennai faces the same problem? Where are we failing?
Yes, year after year, either Chennai is affected either by floods or by drought. in 2019, we had a drought that we had not seen in 50 years. In 2015, we had a flood that we didn't see in 100 years. And today, even after the average rainfall, we are seeing the kind of ways, the visuals that we are seeing is the building of ribbon building, which is the building of the Greater Chennai Corporation. So the Chennai Corporation says that they have spent thousands of crores building stormwater drains and other things. But I think the real concern, the real failure, has been repeatedly told by us and many others as well, which is the complete mismanagement of urban governance. Number one, what they did is that what we are seeing throughout the city is what is called the legalized encroachment. Year after year, many of these water bodies are earmarked for conversion from being a water body to a residential zone to a commercial zone, which is prohibited, which should not be done according to Supreme Court rules, according to High Court rules, but they continue to reclassify in spite of the ban by the High Court and Supreme Courts. Just over the last year, we have stopped at least 5 to 6 such reclassification by the CMDA. Number two, what we are seeing is that, with respect to the water, which needs to be managed in terms of the water bodies, it needs to go into the water bodies, restore our water bodies, recharge our water bodies. So this whole water cycle needs to improve. Chennai is very rich. You need to understand that Chennai has 3 rivers. We have 210 water bodies identified within the Greater Chennai Corporation limit of Chennai itself. And all these, even with these rich resources, what we are seeing is that many of these water bodies are abandoned, encroached, and all that. And year after year, Chennai Corporation says they are allocating huge amounts of budgets. But none of these water bodies, in fact, very, very few water bodies have been restored. And many of these water bodies are in a situation where it can't take water, where it can't recharge water and store water. So Chennai Corporation or the Tamil Nadu government should first be accountable, should first take accountability for every drop of rainwater that's coming in. We have been asking accounts for saying, let's say this is the amount of rainfall that comes in. How much quantity of this rainwater is recharged underground? How much of this is stored as surface water? How much is sent to the sea? And this is something that they need to work on. And only when they do this accounting to the people, they will understand that they need to ensure that they have to send many of whatever water that we are seeing as flooding. It's just a simple technology of taking the gradient and making sure that it goes to the nearby water body and the water body is maintained properly. All that is needed is that this doesn't need rocket science, but unfortunately, this whole vested and political interests of legalized encroachment, making sure the water bodies should not be restored because that can be converted into other real estate purposes in the future. So all these are stopping the political establishments from really working on the solutions that is needed.
Yes, and it's the same story everywhere. It's become so bad and so frequent now that it's difficult to make out what visuals you're looking at, which city they are from. The same flooded streets, floating cars, fallen trees, traffic jams, same story every city. Why is that, Mr. Srinivas Murthy? What do we say to when authorities turn around and tell us, well, we've not been able to catch up with the kind of development or the kind of influx of population that's happened? Mr. Srinivas Murthy. Okay, I'm not too sure if you can hear us. Mr. Srinivas Murthy, good evening.
Can you hear me? I can't hear anybody in the river, so I don't know if I just hope that the question is addressed to me.
Yes, so I'm asking the question to you now, Mr. Srinivas Murthy.
Okay.
What do we, when the authorities say, well, there is too much of population coming into the city, what can we do? What do you make of that reason?
Yeah, so it's very interesting to listen to Mr. Jairam's comments, and also the whole debate that has been going on for the last 1 month about fate of, let's say, the cities or the mega cities that we call. Why have they been failing so much its people? So I think it's time for us to start looking at in a different perspective, that do we need to continue to look at cities as the growth engines? Maybe we need to start looking at that at a policy level. So let's remember, in the last 60, 70, or let's say 100, the policy has been to focused on big 4, 5 big cities, which probably attract all the attention of people, employment. Probably they are the centers of growth which were probably rightly required in 60s and 70s and probably 80s, but now I think they have gone beyond the manageable limits. So ultimately, city is not just about creating infrastructure, making huge layouts, making nice buildings. Cities are also about how well are you able to manage them so that people who live in them live comfortably, happily, without having to face these kind of problems which have now become almost like an annual feature. So here is the my take on such issues. One, that the whole planning process is where I feel that there is an issue, because we start designing projects without really understanding the carrying capacity of that region. There is a way to look at it, how much that region can afford in terms of number of people it can protect, number of people it can accommodate, number of what kind of a resources you have, the natural resources, how much water can it access to. Now, if you look at a city like Hyderabad, though I'm not really aware where Madras gets its water from, but now Hyderabad is trying to draw water from 200-300 kilometers away from Krishna and Godavari rivers. Now, which is how a planner should have advised, saying that no, the carrying capacity of this region is this much. And instead of focusing on just one mega city, can we develop smaller cities around it? Which is what, if you look at it, the famous planner Ebenezer Howard had suggested the concept of garden city. Now, garden city is not about creating gardens in the city. The idea was to try and see, can we restrict, can we monitor, can we control the size of the city? And once we reach to that optimum size, then we develop a neighboring thing, and these pockets which are developed can be connected through a high traffic, very fast transportation mode. And that distance between these two developed nodes could be about anywhere between 15 to 20 kilometers, and that would be a green zone. So that you have basically interconnected developed zone, and each of them would be self-sustained. It can look after itself. You could, instead of having a city of, let's say, 1 crore, you could have 10 cities of 10 lakh or million people. So that way it becomes more manageable. That is one point. Second point is equally important, is that who is doing the planning of these cities? Are people really involved in the process? Now, we talk about people's participatory processes and all that, but look at the kind of master plans we have prepared in this country. First of all, the way master plans are prepared by experts, including people like me, the language we speak and the kind of communication we do with common people is very strange. People don't understand a drawing. A common man does not understand what is land use when you put a yellow color or a red color or a green color. So obviously, I think the process of planning must change. People must get involved in the process of planning. And not only that, they should also be involved in the implementation, so that people take responsibility for their own decisions,
right,
not blame it on government authorities. And primarily this is happening because there are few people for this interest, which could be called vested interest or whatever it is. They take big decisions which definitely benefit them, but it also has adverse effect on majority of the people. But for vote bank, for money matters, for real estate benefits, this has been going on. So obviously, we don't know whom to blame. And secondly, when you look at that, there is certain, if we call this a certain kind of corruption, if we may call it, people down the line think if big people are benefiting from real estate decisions or which are technically not correct decisions, why should I not violate? Why should I not encroach a nala? Why should I not encroach on open land which is available in the city? Because city has failed to look after me in terms of my housing, in terms of my employment, basic health facility. So naturally, you have a lot lot of people who come into these cities. So as a combination of these two issues, one, that can we look at cities now as not necessarily as engines of growth, but probably as a place which has now satisfied basic needs, and now we can look at regional development and also involve more people in the planning and implementation issues. So that start taking, because people are also responsible for the
Okay, so let's look at cities which where you need more development right now for that region. Let's also talk about bringing in people, involving people. Dr. Ravindra, you have experience from the other end.
Yeah.
Would you agree that largely in our cities today, our civic bodies do seem to be failing the people with the kind of system which is in place?
Failing, I agree, because the system is like that for a long time. We have not been able to bring in new ideas and innovations in city management. See, the same old laws which were framed by the British with some changes here and there, the municipal laws or town planning laws, we have been following the same thing. So the main issue, I think, is in the question of governance. Urban governance has become very critical. So when you talk about planning, for instance, Smarty mentioned about the failure of planning, that people are not involved. We are using the same old land use system. Now the question is, we have been talking about it for a long time. Now, what are the alternate planning models that need to be adopted? I think there is still lack of clarity on that. Even town planners don't seem to agree. A city planner may say something, an architect says something, an economist comes in with another view. And then, the government at that level, at a higher level, they tend to take, decisions which are just go by convention. So we need to, bring in a lot of innovations in urban systems. We talk about, for instance, large cities versus small cities and all that. But the fact is that, mega cities have grown. Why do people migrate to cities? People migrate because of the requirement of jobs mainly. It is work. And apart from, other things like higher education and so on and so forth. So where are the jobs in the smallest cities? So we'll have to rethink the entire urbanization process, the urban planning system, if you really want to bring about a big change. There has been failure. There has been a lot of, investments also. So the cities have grown, infrastructure has developed, but certainly infrastructure is not adequate. The quality of infrastructure is poor. Infrastructure breaks down. I agree. The system, for instance, things like corruption and all, they do creep in. See, I can, by my own experience, when I was the corporation commissioner of Bangalore City Corporation, I can tell you, for instance, we talk about a lot of, illegal buildings and coming up and all that. See, at that time, this is more than 20, 25 years back that I'm speaking about. But who is actually responsible for this? On the one hand, it is the builder, it may be the people themselves, but I also felt that, the architects at that stage, they were also not guiding the builders properly. See, otherwise the architect takes major responsibility for inspecting and, certifying. I'm not saying all of them are like that. Yeah, I'll come to that. I see, in fact, I had to issue notices to the architects also. How is it they have, certified these buildings? No, the argument that said is, so far as we are concerned, the plan is according to the rules. There are building regulations, etc. But the real fact is on ground, what is happening? See, all plans are sanctioned according to the master plan or the zoning regulations, let us say. But on ground, many things differ. Ground reality is very different from what is there in the master plan. You may find fault with the master plan, I agree. The need for a lot of modernizing the entire planning system. But whatever the system, see, the way we operate our own, whether it is a planning system or the building zoning regulations or the other rules and regulations pertaining to managing cities, I think the ground reality is very different, and this is where it becomes very complicated. And I think, of course, one of the major issues is the question of the politics of urban governance. Ultimately, I think that is the real reason. We speak about, for instance, decentralization. Why are we not empowering cities? Why are we not empowering mayors, as in Western countries? See, this we have been, in spite of the 74
Right.
Constitutional Amendment, which is more than 25 years ago, she passed, which, according to the spirit of the Constitution, is that you have to decentralize functions to the local government, the municipalities. But that power of decentralization has been left to the states. So it is the state governments which need to again, amend the laws and then empower the city governments. On paper, yes, it has been done. Out of those.
Okay, so
18
let's take
functions,
that.
it has been transferred on paper. But people, even at the state level, state government level, the ministers or the bureaucrats at that level, they are not really willing to part with power to the local government, so that then even involvement of the people's participation, all that will become more meaningful. That has not happened so far.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Let me take that point, because I did want to talk about this, which was to change, whether we need to overhaul the existing structures. The way our municipal bodies, our civic bodies are designed, where the accountability comes in, the powers given or not, the non-existent powers as far as the mayor is concerned. So I'll take that point across to Mr. Leo Saldanha. Mr. Saldanha, what's your own sense? Because, especially in a city like Bengaluru, where people are very vocal, are very active, they want to be part of the city planning, would it help to essentially change the structure of the civic body?
As somebody who has worked with housing rights, street vendors' rights, rights of communities who are resident in peri-urban and central districts, as someone who has helped organize against destruction of streets, widening of roads, putting up useless infrastructure like flyovers, even the way in which the metro is conceived, and somebody who has gone to court multiple times, one thing that I can say with great certainty is that this is what you now see and what you experience and what you suffer is the outcome of hubris. And the hubris is not to be laid at the feet of the politicians, though it's very easy to blame the politicians. We can always vote them out. The problem is the embedded bureaucracy. I have studied and I have followed how, for instance, planning agencies like, the BDA, which is a parastatal, which works on the diktat of a senior bureaucrat who in turn listens to the chief minister. Dr. Ravindra served that role. And what I've seen from everyone who has served that role is they don't listen to people. It's not like we don't have an imagination of a city which is functional, which is democratic, which is socially inclusive and ecologically viable, but it is that we have bureaucrats who guide the politicians in a particular imaginary, and then the politicians take advantage of it. And the imaginary is you can build your way out of this nonsense. That is utter rubbish. And the problem we now have is a new imagination which is coming from none less than the Prime Minister's office. He claims that, by building 100 smart cities, he will revolutionize India and make urban India very productive, and, all positive things will come out. But look at the last 6-7 years. It's a colossal failure, smart cities. But what we should worry about is the massive diversion of money. Totally massive. More than 100,000 crores has been diverted to smart cities, and all of that has failed. So where is the accountability of the Prime Minister? Where is the accountability of the Urban Ministry? Where is the accountability of the state bureaucracy and the state legislature to the 74th Amendment that Dr. Ravindra mentioned, which is a very beautiful imagination of inclusive planning, democratic development, and accountability which meets the standards that the Constitution has cast on it. What you're now seeing is not just corruption, it is systematized loot. Every time you have these floods, now you watch another 2 weeks, all sorts of crazy projects will be thrown at us. And then we have a problem. We have a racial problem. That is, when people who are intrinsic to a city, like for instance, groups like I work with, Environment Support Group, so many times we go to the Bangalore Corporation. So many times we go to them, we're just thrown out. We have no interest, self-interest. We are public interest workers, but they will prefer people from France or China or Singapore to come and tell us how to plan our cities. And they don't care about what kind of life we will have after plan, make the money and leave. And that has been going on decade after decade after. It is not that the 74th Amendment has failed us. It is not that the Constitution has failed it. It is not that people don't know how to live. We have the longest history of urbanization in this country. The Harappan civilization is a testimony to that fact. That they could, that does not take rocket science. It does not take engineers and super skilled planners. Most of the tank irrigation systems, the ARIs as they call it in Tamil Nadu, or the Keresu as we call it in Karnataka, were built to control floods, for instance. Were built to regulate the overflow of rain.
Correct.
That was when the population densities were so low and there were no massive metropolises like this. If anything has been destroyed, it is the soul of this country by the capitulation to certain forces, by the embedded bureaucracy, and the kind of politics we have created out of the type of laws which are largely empowering parastatals like the BDA or the Smart City project. Throw them into the dustbin, bring back the value of the 74th Amendment, ensure urban governance means actually devolution of power. Make sure that ward committees and area sabhas get into planning and they shape the visions, they imagine the city, they shape the plans, let the maps travel, let the land use plan travels, let the skills travel to where people are. People don't have to run behind bureaucrats. Enough of that. That is the country we have to abandon. If you want to build a new India, it means that we have to build our neighborhoods.
So I just want to take that point back to Mr. Ravindra. And Mr. Ravindra, because you understand how this system from within works as a former BBMP commissioner, do explain to us what's the accountability of the officials, of the bureaucrats, when there is rampant corruption in many cities? And I'm not talking specifically of one city or one civic body.
That's right.
It's a reality across our country right now. What's the accountability?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there is certainly, lack of accountability. That is again because the functions, the powers are distributed, and it's so fragmented. As Mr. Leo was mentioning just now, there are so many agencies in the city. See, although the elected body is supposed to be really constitute the local government, we have a development authorities, maybe BDA in Bangalore or DDA in Delhi or HDMA in Hyderabad or whatever it is. And there are, unless you are able to bring all the civic functions under one body, then you will not really have the concept of the local government. And then empower that, the mayor and his team, whatever it is, the political executive. In fact, let me tell you that years back, we did prepare a separate, urban governor, Bangalore Metropolitan Urban Governance Bill, and placed it before the government. Where it is completely tried to give a democratic system. In fact, we said, get rid of this BDA and other agencies, bring all the agencies under, at least as an umbrella under the BBMP, and empower them and delegate sufficient powers so that they are able to administer themselves. So you see that bill is not taken off at all. Further, later they appointed another committee or one more committee. They have also made some recommendations. It is all lying with the government. I mean, it is not that the politicians don't know. The only point that I disagree with Mr. Leo Saldanha is that it is not that the bureaucrats advise something and the politicians either they take their advice, don't take their advice. I mean, the real question is, it is not that don't underrate the politicians. The political leaders, they do know, and they do listen to the bureaucrats, but they have to take their own decisions. Ultimately, the final decision is taken by them. Even where right advice is given, they may differ for their own reasons. I don't say no. So, in fact, we are keen that the people or the local bodies should be empowered sufficiently so that accountability comes in.
Right.
Today, accountability is diffused. See, in the BBMP or any city corporation, they'll pass the buck from one to the other. The mayor or the elected councillor will say it is the commissioner, or it is the officials, or the engineers, etc. The officials will say, no, there is not a political interference, we are not allowed to function, or whatever it is, it's very easy to pass the buck these days in the present system. So you need a kind of a unified, command or governance at the city level, which is still not in place. Unless that comes in, it is very difficult to fix accountability. In fact, in our bill, we have made provisions for all this, including transparency, accountability, and all that.
Okay, fair enough. But that accountability needs to come in, because unless and until there is fear of action, unless and until there is, fear of a repercussion, I don't see how many officials would even be inspired to do the right thing. Mr. Venkatesan, do you have a view on this? Rampant corruption is a reality amongst most civic bodies in our big cities today.
Correct. And we have been continuously coming up with evidences of all these corruption in stormwater drains, in water bodies. We have submitted all these evidences to the state government, to the vigilance agencies. There is cases going on in the court, but still we are not seeing the political will or the will to take accountability. What we are seeing is that again this large-scale corruption. It's not about bureaucracy or politicians. I think there is a very, very strong nexus between the bureaucrats and the politicians that is very, very tough to get away with. Let us look at 2 or 3 examples very shortly. In Chennai, when we are talking about this whole Pallikaranai marshland, this is the marshland, very, very rich marshland, very central to the Chennai issue, the flooding issue as well as the drought issue. Marshlands can take up 10 times more water than the normal lands, but still, what has happened? The Chennai Corporation has floated tenders to dump 95% of the waste collected into the Pallikaranai marshland. And can it get more absurd than this? We have solid waste management rules of 2016, which says we have to segregate waste. We have to make sure most of it is processed locally, and only a minimum has to be sent to a landfill that is not a water body. But still, they have floated tenders for 8 years from now for 6,000 crores to send 95% of the waste collected from the households right into the Pallikaranai marshland. This is after. So what does the government has learned from the 2015 floods? We have asked the government, is there any learning document that you have? What's the kind of governance that you're going to take up? So unless the government comes forward, declares many of these water bodies has hotspots, unless they display the political will to make sure that, see, again and again, I'm saying that this doesn't require a huge kind of rocket science or anything. It's a very simple management of water bodies is what we are saying. And I think many of them will agree. The issue is the amount of budget that is put into destroying the city is multifold, is many, many times more than, rejuvenation of the water body or making sure that, our waste is processed. These are processes for which the government needs to spend a lot of time. Instead, they are much more interested in coming up with packages, tender packages that could be sold easily to the contractors, where they will build this box type of stormwater drains to collect all the water and send it all the way to the sea. Today we are seeing so much of rain. Next year, we will be suffering a lot where we will have no water. So this is the kind of situation that we are in, very, very sad state of affairs, and we have not learned anything after 2015 floods as well.
Yeah, the problem is that every time it happens, there is a massive outrage proportional to the impact that a city may have seen. Then there is a demand for accountability, then committees are set up, then committees go into the research, they dig out the details, they make recommendation, and then it just becomes another file on the stack of files which are already there in any official's office, and nothing further is ever done about it. Let me give an example. And I will give an example of Chennai itself. A massive encroachment in Chennai has been a problem. Like Mr. Venkatesan was saying, there was a parliamentary committee that inquired into the cause of the floods in 2015, and it was categorical in its report that encroachment of lakes and riverbeds played a major role in causing these massive floods. Like Mr. Venkatesan is saying, we've not learned any lessons. We know what's gone wrong. We know there has been encroachment. We know that the riverbeds have been destroyed. We know that we are never on time with our drainage cleanup. We know that we are not on time with our drainage systems upgradation work. Many of these cities, including city of Mumbai, has a drainage system that goes decades back. Some from the Victorian era, including the city of Hyderabad, Mr. Srinivas Murthy, and more often than not, these issues become commissions and committees and recommendation reports that don't go anywhere. Once these reports are submitted, who is responsible? Is it the bureaucrat? Is it the commissioner? Is it the MLC? Who am I to ask this question? Why has this not been done?
Simply, you should not ask questions. That is where we have reached in this country. I mean, how dare you ask questions to administration and government? I mean, the problem here is that if you look at, I have been watching newspapers of Hyderabad for the last couple of years. Every day there is a small, 2 centimeters by 3 centimeter notice comes out saying that somebody has applied for change of land use for their land parcel, and do you have any objection? I really wonder if common people even notice that advertisement and reply to that. So the whole idea here is that what is the value of a master plan if it is scientifically done? And I wish, what Mr. Ravindra was saying, that architects really had that kind of a power to violate. And you know that architects have a very small role to play in the whole game of so-called development. They are only pawns. They are not necessarily, the people who sign on the drawings are not necessarily the ones who are actually sometimes design or build. I mean, you must understand architects are only serving the people. It's not that if architect refuses to sign on it, builder is not going to build. That's not the point here. The point here is that which are the crucial issues and how do we address these issues? These are the key issues to understand. I would like to see that the mistakes of the last 70, 100 years, should we now look at another method where we don't repeat that in the coming 100 years so that cities become livable, safe, and good for, without any such problems. So one such thing is to understand what is this master plan. If we are talking about a master plan, forget about all the processes that we need to follow. Whether it has been a bad plan or a good plan, can we stick to it? The problem is most of the cities don't stick to the plan that has been envisaged for the coming 20, 30, or even 10 years. It keep changing, and many people, including bureaucrats and politicians, will come and tell you that we need to change with the time. Then what is the problem of the planners or the people who have envisioned the master plan? Can they not envision the growth? Can we not envision certain problems that they're likely to face? Whereas whole of the US is now getting ready for climate change. They are talking about how to tackle cities which are on the coast and how do you address the issue of rise in the water level. And here we are not even thinking about it. I mean, this is how bizarre we can get with our cities planning. And also you look at it, this is most of the time when somebody was mentioning that there are n number of flyovers being proposed. First of all, I would like to ask, who tells them that flyovers are the answers to the problems of the city? And how come a bureaucrat and a politician and the committee which takes the decision agrees that flyovers are the traffic problems, solving the traffic issues in the city? No. So the point here is that you appoint a consultant and they are hired to give you feasibility reports. Unfortunately, in India, feasibility reports are all about how we can make it feasible rather than to tell in reality whether it is really feasible or not. And that is where the problem starts. So definitely, I think the people who are fighting for their own rights, their own employment issues, their own livelihood in the city, the people who are NGOs who are trying to make sense out of in the chaos, they are literally in minority, and definitely the system is right now top heavy. It does not want to listen to people. Like I was mentioning, and somebody repeated that point, like, why do we get these foreign consultants who don't understand our cities? Do they understand what the waste of the city is? And what's going to be dumped is going to be a neighborhood of another citizen. But for a consultant who is not from the city, that land is an open land. It's a barren land. He doesn't understand that it is somebody's neighborhood. So these are the issues which need to be addressed. when we talk about disaster management, when we want to fight the disaster, where are the public committees constituted by, let's say, respective civic bodies? No, they would again have a force which definitely does a good job of trying to help people. But to solve the problem on a long-term basis, you need to involve the people of the city, of the locality, of your colony. Make a committee and which provides a solution, and government and the local bodies must look into that. And the sad part is that even if you look at when somebody had mentioned about who participates in the planning process. Now, typically, all the development authorities are not people participatory organizations, whereas municipal corporations are, where you elect representatives and they're part of the municipal bodies. But in development authorities, probably you don't see that kind of a structure happening. The problem is that you put up a master plan once in 10 years for 1 day, 1 month, and then you expect that in 1 hour's public hearing meeting, you will solve all, listen to people's opinions and give solutions. So that's now how it works. So I think that time has come where we need to change the way we look at the planning process. Definitely, we need to make it more people participatory. People must also come forward, contribute, and make sure that once they contribute, they also stick to the laws which have been created so that they don't become party to the violations. Because indirectly, for whatever reason, it is people who are violating, they suffer, and at the end of it, it's very easy for a bureaucrat and politician to say, oh, spirit of Mumbai is going to take care of itself. People are great. Yes, people are great. That is why we have been able to survive. But what happens to the system which is supposed to provide us with good governance, good management, and a good vision for our cities?
No, may I just come in and I think I do agree.
No, yes, absolutely.
With what Mr. Srinivas Murthy has said. I mean, don't take that architects thing very serious. That was just one example I gave because of what you said earlier. I agree. I mean, you see, a whole lot of things need to be changed. See, one of the biggest problems we face in urban management is the lack of professionalism. See, we speak about whether it is the town planning authority or the municipal city corporation. The people working there, are not really trained in modern urban management techniques and things like or urban planning techniques. We are following the same old thing. Even, see, we need people there. I mean, architect is certainly, you are a professional, but similar professionals to work on, see, even preparing a master plan or examining all the, comments and objections that are received after a master plan is published. See, you certainly need people who are well equipped in modern, they equip their knowledge and all that. But in fact, let me tell you, frankly, another drawback or the, deficiency that municipalities suffer, or in general, government organizations is, see, as of now, for instance, there are so many vacancies also. In the BBMP itself, because of this pandemic, the COVID-19, we found, the BBMP tried to advertise urgently and get some doctors and all that. And then they said, we'll pay you 30,000 rupees. And nobody turned up for the interview. They have some 50 vacancies of doctors, 100 vacancies of nurses. So, and then we blame them also in the sense, it's a very difficult situation. It's many things have gone wrong and they need to be put in place. So where do you start and how do you start? I mean, this is the question. It is not that there is a lack of advice or lack of expert committees and all that. I think any government, any state government, or they have to come to grips with the situation. I mean, really, I think particularly people in power at the highest level,
the question is when
to understand the seriousness of the situation, where cities are headed. I think cities are, if we leave it off like this, one fine morning you'll find they will become totally unmanageable. Even now they are. I agree. I mean, people from different professions, whether they are town planners, architects, economists, and even people representing the people, sociologists also. We talk about participatory planning. But how do we really achieve all of this? See, a city is like a government, city government. But in practice, there is no city government. It is just a local body with certain functions entrusted and which are continuously interfered with by the higher authorities. And
if I can just take that point up and take it across to Leo Sultana, Dr. Ravindra.
Yeah.
If I can just
Pardon?
take that point up that you made about, where the states need to come in and the state governments need to come in. Leo Saldana, the other thing that I find odd is that these are the cities, and now we're talking about the big metros of our country. This is where even our big leaders, even our politicians, our state governments and the assemblies and the ministries, they all function in these cities. One would assume that at least where they live, they would be a little bit more interested in fixing the problem. Why doesn't it still happen?
Well, let me give an example from Bangalore, and it will explain why they are self-serving. One of the largest wetlands of Bangalore was built into by civil servants. The IAS and IFS officers created a colony, and today it gets flooded. And then they let the urbanization process there. Now, the people who approved that, they were never held accountable for the floods that take place now. But in 1995, I took a case to the High Court of Karnataka, and I said the entire Kormangala-Bellandur belt will get flooded if these projects are approved. And unfortunately, the court dismissed. But that's the type of thing that has happened subsequently also. But there has been correction from the judiciary. For instance, in Karnataka, the Karnataka High Court has stepped in, and 10 years ago, on a PIL I took, addressed the fact that if we do not work to build cities from the ground up in ways that they actually work with the environmental factors, then it will have catastrophic consequences, as you now see. So the catastrophe is not going to come. We are actually going through that. To avoid this, in 1992, there was a game changer in the Constitution to ensure that all these rubbish agencies, I call them, the Bangalore Development Authority, which are parastatals filled with people, were mostly corrupt. Let's say that as it is, instead of just edging around and suffering even more, because I have been seeing the kind of colossal suffering these decisions cause. It's criminal. And none of the criminals are held accountable. Whoever decided that are never held accountable. So the way we get out of that is by ensuring that accountability is instituted through people-governed processes. It has to be ground up. We have to manage our cities by reorganizing them in a way people understand it. It is not going to happen through the master planning process, because what it does is it illegalizes most people. So we need to ensure that the law doesn't come as a mechanism to obstruct people from owning up and recreating their cities and making them livable. And let's also appreciate that lots of people want to walk and cycle. So most of the infrastructure, which makes lots of money for the embedded bureaucracy and the politicians, is unnecessary loot of public resources. That has to be reinvested in better neighborhood management, better solid waste management, better water management, rehabilitating of lakes, and not just lakes. We only focus on lakes because they're visible. What has been invisibilized, for instance, in Bangalore, is the canal networks. We have 840 kilometers of the canal network. Most of it has been encroached and worse, concretized. And whose decision was it? It was by the BBMP and BDA. Now, it is one of the most stupid things to do. When water flows, you want it to soak the ground, not put it in a conveyor belt and send it into a lake which gets flooded and then floods the neighborhood and then goes and floods the next lake, and so on and so forth, right? So this is the kind of nonsense which we call planning. I mean, therefore, I think the argument really is
perhaps a decision that was taken without bringing in the experts and their views. I mean, nothing else could explain that. Mr. Saldana, I understand the point that you're making, but very quickly, because I'm on short on time, and we did ask even our viewers to come in and share their views, and Mr. Shailesh has been waiting patiently on the phone line. So very quickly, quick comment from Mr. Shailesh, who's calling us from Chennai. Good evening.
Good evening, Tanvi. First of all, thank you to Mirror Now for bringing up these issues. And I would just like to make one brief point. See, for the amount of taxes we are asked to pay, both indirect and direct taxes, by the corporation and by the government of the state and the center, what do we get in return? Do we get good healthcare, good education, infrastructure? Everything you see is completely in shambles. And I'm talking about metro cities, not just tier 2, tier 3 or the other cities. If this is the condition, why the hell should we pay taxes, number one? And number two, where is the accountability? Where does all the money go? I go to register a property, I pay 14% to the government. Where is all the money used?
In many cases, Shailesh, I'm not too sure about, the Chennai's corporation fund status, but like, for example, in the case of the civic body in Mumbai, they don't use the funds. They just are lying there unused. And this is over and above whatever corruption may be going on. funds, taxes collected from citizens just lying unused. For the last several years, I haven't seen the civic bodies utilize all of the funds as per their own budget plan, and that money just keeps lying there. But I get the point you're making, and I think as taxpayers, we should question our legislators, our corporators, of what's happening with the money that we are paying our authorities. Thanks, Shailesh, for calling us. Very quickly, Mr. Ramesh on the phone line. He's calling us from Mumbai. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for having me. And as you mentioned, I'm a resident of Mumbai, and I have been traveling in local train since 2000. And particularly, I'm a resident of Ambernath. You may know it's around 60 kilometers from Mumbai CST, and I'm a regular commuter of it. And what I want to say is, you may remind the famous 2005 floods of Mumbai. I got stuck during the flood, and I was remained in my professional office for 4-5 days. After 4-5 days, I finally would manage to reach my home by different mode of transportation. But here, what I want to say, the scenario remains same in every monsoon since 2005. And I was anticipated in 2020 much because we are in amid COVID. I supposed and I thought civic body has lot of time this year. Particularly, I anticipated this time this chaotic situation may not happen, but we used to face this monsoon also. Even last month we got struck for 1 or 2 days during my essential services. My professional, ma'am. So even
every year, Mr. Ramesh, you know it and I know it. And citizens not just of suburban Mumbai or the MMR region, but also in Chennai, in Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Pune. It's repeatedly now happening even in Pune, in Delhi and Gurugram now. Repeatedly every single year, it's the same story. And authorities just don't want to learn. They just don't want to change. They just don't want to fix. Why? Because there is simply no accountability. Completely out of time on this edition of the debate. A big thank you to all of our panelists for joining us as well on this great Indian civic body collapse, civic collapse, absolute misgovernance, lack of governance. You and I are the ones having to pay the price. Thank you for joining us.